get started. My name is Sari. I'm the Public Programs Director of MOFAD. You probably know you're at a MOFAD event. I hope you do. If you have never been to a MOFAD event before, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. If you have been to MOFAD events before, virtually or maybe even in person, gosh, almost a year ago was probably the last time. It's been almost a year since we had a public space for you to join us. So we're so glad that we're still able to connect and find ways to still do public programs and have community. I'm so happy that tonight we have Jennifer Aitley returning to us. I don't know, some of you might have seen her in our recent Why Do Jews Eat Chinese Food program for Christmas. Not why do they eat Chinese food, but why specifically for Christmas. So if you attended that, you will probably recognize her face. And pretty soon she's going to introduce the rest of the panelists who are all part of this emoji story that they'll be discussing tonight. I hope all of you got the link to watch the movie in your own time. I know some of you have watched it already. Some of you are going to watch after this conversation. Totally fine either way. I just want to let you know that we are recording this event and the chat is open for questions. So if you have questions that come up during the conversation, totally fine to type them in. Jenny's going to be leading the panel conversation for the first 45 minutes or so. She might get to your question during that, she might not. We will definitely reserve at least 15 to 10 minutes at the end to try and get to any questions that we didn't get to during that panel conversation. That's about all I wanted to say, except that, you know, if you haven't signed up for the MOFAD newsletter yet, please do. I will definitely send you an email reminding you to do that tomorrow. We have so many virtual programs. We just added 6 programs for February celebrating Black History Month. We just put all of those up. We're very excited about it. So make sure that you are staying in touch with us so you can come to many more virtual programs such as this. And with that, I am going to shut up and turn it over to the amazing, one of the producers of the movie, The Emoji Story, Jennifer Aitley.
Hi, I'm Jenny. I am both a producer on the documentary, The Emoji Story, and also the co-founder with Yiying Lu of Emoji Nation, whose motto is emoji by the people, for the people. And you know, have worked a lot in bringing lots of food emoji into this universe. And I'm really excited actually to bring, this might be our first like food emoji panel ever. So I'm gonna let the panelists introduce themselves in terms of what they fought for in terms of bringing something to your mobile keyboard. And then we're gonna like kind of go more in depth with their stories. So Yiying, why don't you start?
Thank you, Jenny. Hi, everybody. My name is Yiying Lu, and as you can probably see on my name, Sebastian was saying that I'm showing off. I have dumpling, chopstick, fortune cookie, takeout box, the peacock, and the boba emoji there. I actually designed all these emojis, and I was so glad that get the chance to see you all. I mean, I can't really see you all, but you know, feel your energy here. I worked with Jenny on proposing the dumpling emoji together. And it was really amazing. Throughout the years, we also have the chopstick fortune cookie takeout box. And just this year, we had the boba emoji finally were available, not this year, last year now, in November. So I have been sort of bridging the gap between art and tech, and the real life job I do is I am a creative director, and I work with a lot of different tech companies and different organizations to really using art and design as a vehicle to innovate the space and making bigger social impact and creating more innovations. So I'm really glad to be here to talk about food emoji, which is one of my favorite topic, and potentially sort of dig into more history and also why we are doing what we do. So I'm glad to be here, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, and then Clint, your story is really fun.
Okay. So I'm Clint Adams. I live in New York City. I do technology work for an insurance company right now, and I am here representing the garlic and onion emoji.
And there was one that didn't make it, but we'll get to that later. Yeah. Sebastian.
I'm Sebastian Delmont. I'm a Venezuelan New Yorker that a couple of years ago decided to propose the Arepa emoji to bring some of our food culture from Latin America into our keyboards and our screens. And I'm a software developer by trade.
So as those of you who might have seen the documentary know, or just know offhand, Emoji are regulated by the Unicode Consortium, which is a nonprofit organization based in Mountain View, California, whose members are mostly large US multinational tech companies. And the interesting thing is, like, anyone technically can propose an emoji. So in some ways, it's a very open process, but the adventure can be somewhat tumultuous and in terms of like the pushback and the questions and all that. So I'm curious, Sebastian, can you tell us a little bit about what your experience was like going through with the Arepa emoji and all of the, everything that went with it?
So yeah, I started the formal process was literally 2 years ago that I first started. A bit over 2 years ago, at the end of 2018, I started looking at this idea. I saw actually an interview with Jennifer, and I think it was Yiying too, but the dumpling emoji, and I said, I mean, if there's a dumpling emoji, why can't we have an arepa emoji? It's like this is the food we eat every day in our house in Latin America, in Venezuela. Why not? And so I started doing some research, and I found that yes, it was Unicode, and you had to write a document. So about 2 years ago, I started writing the document, and in the process, I found this website called emojination.org, and I land in a Slack room in a chat where Jennifer says, "How can we help?" And it's like, yeah, here I have a document. I want to propose it. I had done a lot of the research myself, but I was still not sure if I was doing the right, if I was taking the right path, was writing the document the right way, and basically had to rewrite the document to submit it to Unicode with more information. It ended up turning that trying to propose an emoji for a piece of food from a country with 35 million inhabitants might not have given it the best chance of being approved. It ended up being transformed into the Latin flatbread to include both the Colombian arepa, the Salvadorian pupusas, the Mexican gorditas. I submitted the proposal. It was rejected on the basis that the image was not clear enough. We had to resubmit with a new design. Ended up finding an amazing designer out of San Francisco, another Venezuelan, Lumen Bigot. And like it was thanks really to Emojination support and giving us the help and support and giving us a view into what Unicode was asking of us in the proposal, that we get the arepa approved. And this was March of 2019. And it's only this month that the arepa is finally on most devices in the world. It was at the end of last year is when you started seeing it in the keyboards in Android phones, and then on Macs and iOS, and finally Facebook and WhatsApp. It literally took 2 years from the start, the germ of the idea, to having it in my screen and being able to put it on my name here in Zoom as part of a conversation. But what really was, and it was something I was not expecting. I wanted to be able to put the emoji in my messages, but what really was eye-opening for me was when I saw the emoji in the keyboard alongside with the baguette and the croissant and the bagel and regular bread. It's like, it's not just that I can communicate the way I wanted to communicate with people who understood what I was talking about, but that a piece of my culture was there among every other piece of the culture of food of the world. It's like getting a piece accepted in a museum to represent a style or a culture, that it is a significant step, that it was, and it's something I didn't have in mind at all when I started proposing the emoji, or when it was accepted. It was literally when I saw it on my phone in the keyboard among all the other emojis that I realized the significance of that level of representation.
Were you moved?
Totally. No, it was like, and and then when friends and family and people I didn't know started seeing it too, and I started seeing the reaction, and I was like, really, I've said it before, is like, this is probably one of the most significant things I've done in my life, and it was insignificant from the amount of effort it took compared to the impact it ended up having. That I don't know if I'll do something that has as much impact as this ever again. And it was not it's just a little thing. It's a little character this big in your phone. That's like 72 by 72 pixels. It's like, that's it. There's nothing more to it than that. But it is hugely important to a lot of people.
And have you seen people use the Arepa emoji in like their like Instagram or Twitter names?
I've seen a few Venezuelans putting them in their names as soon as they found out. And I've also started to see them taking for themselves some other emojis that are not exactly the piece of Venezuelan food, like the tamal has an equivalent in Venezuela, which is the hallaca, or even the dumpling emoji is an empanada. Like, people start taking it, and that's another incredible thing that happened when I started to fight for the Arepa emojis, that you discover that it's not your food. It's not, even if especially when you turn it into an image that doesn't have the particular taste of the spice you put on it.
Yep.
It's anybody's food that looks similar to it.
Yes.
And you embrace that. It's like, more power to you. Go take it. I'm not going to fight with you over what the original one was. I will fight with people that come and say, that's not an arepa, that's something else. And like, here it says flatbread. No, it is an arepa. That emoji is there because of me. And if I'm going to fight for something, it's for the fact that is an arepa.
Yeah, I was going to say that oftentimes Unicode will rename something so that it's just more generic. So Arepa became flatbread. Paella is actually shallow pan with food. And then what started as the doner kebab, which was basically the wrap, is called, I think it's called like stuffed flatbread or stuffed pita or something. It has a name that's sort of like much more generic, and that's on purpose. And I actually remember having arguments within the Unicode committee about what to name Arepa. And I have like all kinds of like gossip if anyone wants to get into like our like, you know, to the mat fight for Arepa inside the decision making process. But Clint, your journey with the Allium family. How did you get there? And some things didn't make it. So please tell me your journey.
So I don't remember exactly what I was trying to express, but for some reason I wanted to use garlic emoji, and I went looking for it and I couldn't find it, and I was very confused. And I realized that
why were you confused, if that makes sense? Like what?
Well, so I guess for decades I thought of Unicode as this standard that has everything in it, and I guess I'd never needed or wanted to use an emoji that didn't exist before. So I just kind of assumed anything might be there. There were plenty of vegetables there already. I think there was, broccoli and eggplant and I don't know what else, but no alliums. So I was ranting a little to various people, like how can there be no garlic? How can there be no onion? And my friend Amanda said, well, why don't you do something about it? And how would I do that? And she put me in touch with Jenny, and I went down the rabbit hole, which is the emoji proposal submission process. And a couple of years later, we got garlic, we got onion, and maybe some year in the future we'll get some other edible alliums. Who knows?
Yeah. Wait, do you have 4? Because I know the one that didn't make it was the leek / scallion. I remember
Yep.
not all of them can make across across the bridge, and that makes sense. Like some of them sometimes had to be sacrificed in order to preserve like the 2 that could make it. But I felt like there was was there a 4th one, or was it just 3?
At one point we were talking about doing, I think, 7 or so different ones. I think there was in addition to garlic and onion and leek and scallion, shallot, and
shallot.
I can't remember now, but yeah, there were a
No,
bunch.
I remember shallot. Yeah, I don't think shallot had a fighting chance. Like leek and scallion sort of like on the edge, but it felt like too much allium at once. So I felt like garlic and onion was sort of like your best chance. But I mean, are you that passionate about alliums that it was worth your time?
Yeah, in retrospect, I think it was worth my time, because now I get to use the garlic and onion emoji. But I'm kind of passionate about food in general, so that's.
And how does it feel to see other people use the onion and the garlic emoji?
Pretty good. It's I guess there's no unlike the emoji from my fellow panelists, there's no real cultural bias struggle with garlic and onion, because they're almost universal. But it's kind of democratizing to let people be able to use that in expression. So I think it was worth going through that.
And Yiying, you have many emoji, some which made it through the first time. Dumpling, which was our first, and then ending most recently triumphantly with the Boba emoji. For those of you guys who who like that, I can, that was actually a real struggle. Was rejected the first time, but you have a great story and great journey of all food emoji along the way, and like threw in Peacock while you were at it, which was kind of great.
I'm sorry, I'm still like, my cheek still hurts when I was looking at Clint's like garlic background. I can't get over it. I was like, oh my God, oh gosh, it's really amazing to meet someone like behind the garlic and onion. I mean, I kind of know Sebastian because I've never actually met Sebastian, but I heard Sebastian Lumin's story from the BBC interview. And it feels like I've already met the person. And it's so amazing to meet the people who have fought for these food emoji that is kind of in our everyday life. I started to cook a lot more during the pandemic. And every day I had to put garlic and onion. And thanks to you, Clint, I can talk to other people about this. This is actually really important.
Fantastic.
Yeah, you should get like signature from Spice Girls. You got to get all the spice. Oh gosh, where do I start, Jenny? It's all your fault.
Right. I mean, I feel like you have to tell your dumpling story.
It's all because of you. That's why, like, I got into this rabbit hole because of you. So thank you for that. I mean, for those of you who don't know, like, it's so great that in some way, Jenny and I, we both look alike. We always joke around like we're like sisters from another mister. But me and Jenny were both Chinese American in some way, but I was born in Shanghai. I was born in China. And Jenny and I, we met in 2009, I believe, 2009. Yeah, the first time I came to New York City from Australia. So my story started because of the Twitter fail whale. For those of you who knows and used Twitter in the early days, you might have seen this white whale lifted by 8 little red birds. Every time when Twitter sort of crashed, you will see the whale greet you on the big screen. That was actually my work. That happened to be a piece of artwork that I did when I was still in school, at the time living in Sydney, New South Wales. Pun was not intended. Yes. So it was kind of a serendipitous thing because I did that piece of artwork when I was finishing exchange study. So I was born and raised in Shanghai, China, was doing exchange study in London, and then later on moved back to Sydney for my final year. And so I did this piece of artwork. And at the time, those of you know, internet just came about, and there's this teeny tiny little startup in San Francisco called Twitter, and they crashed a lot. And their co-founder, Biz Stone, found the image, and somehow this illustration connected me with the tech community. And so it's pretty amazing. In 2009, I was very fortunate to be actually sort of connected with the tech community and got a Shorty Awards in New York. So I flew to New York from Sydney. It's actually the first time I'm ever coming to the US, coming to the continent of America, actually. And so in the beginning, I thought that sort of my life mission and life purpose is being the bridge between art and tech, because I was then working with hundreds of tech startups. I was working as a creative director of a company called 500 Startups, which is a VC firm that helps accelerating startup companies. So I was doing a lot of work with people who are working in tech. But in the meantime, I fell in love with the energy and innovation spirit from people, especially the people in the Bay Area. So I kind of travel back and forth a lot. Eventually, I decided to move here in San Francisco. I'm currently in San Francisco. I moved to San Francisco in 2015. And funny enough, that Jenny was at the time also relocated from New York to San Francisco. So a mutual friend actually reintroduced us via text message. And Jenny was kind enough to invite me to her house to have pot sticker dumplings. After almost 5 years, we haven't seen each other for more than 5 years. So I was very excited, and I wanted to text her back the dumpling emoji. And I realized there was no dumpling emoji on the phone. And I was like, how is that even possible? And she's like, yeah. And so she's like, good point. I said, Apple doesn't have a dumpling emoji on the keyboard. And so then I went back and I thought, well, wait a minute, I'm a designer. I have imagination. I can potentially make it happen. So I kind of just did a fun sort of illustration of the first dumpling, which is, I call this the bling bling dumpling, because it kind of animated and it kind of isomorphic. And I sent it back to Jenny. And she said, I love it, you know. And so then the next thing you know is we were chatting and eating with friends during the dumpling gathering. And we realized that dumpling is actually very universal. Like Georgia have khinkali, Japan has gyoza, Italy have ravioli, you know, we have like pierogi, empanadas. It's universal in a way that is not just Asian food, it's actually a very international food. And Jenny, by nature, she was a reporter at New York Times, and she's very into publishing. And so she took the lead and was doing more research and find out that the Unicode Consortium, which is the nonprofit organization that's in the Bay Area, was in charge of our language on the keyboard. And so at the time, I think we did several meetings with the Unicode Consortium. They call this the UTC meeting, which is Unicode Technical Committee meeting. We were like traveling to the South Bay. And I think in the meantime, because Jenny also wrote the book about the fortune cookie and the General Tso chicken, I think the movie she did, she's very passionate about like Asian American food, especially. I think that's kind of her heritage growing up. And I'm also sort of getting more and more interested in what, in a way, I think, because I was born and raised in Asia. And for me, it's so fascinating to hear people's story if they were born and raised in America, they have a complete different, well, not complete, but a very different lens about food. Like General Tso chicken, for example, I've never had it in my life. Before I came to the US, even though General Tso like is a very important historical figure in the Chinese textbook, and I knew about the history, but it was so fascinating for me to kind of rediscover that piece of history through food. So I think I learned a lot from talking to Jenny and talking to people who were sort of born and raised here and as like Asian diaspora. So I kind of discovered there's so much more than just this teeny tiny little emoji. But the dumpling chopstick fortune cookie takeout box, we submitted all together with the Boba emoji around the same time by the end of 2015. The 4 emoji dumpling, chopstick, fortune cookie, and takeout box were approved, but the boba was rejected. Because at the time, I kind of just want to throw in the boba because I was working at 500 at the time, which is, a bunch of people would communicate on Slack. And people were always complaining there was no boba emoji because everybody loves to do boba runs, which is basically going outside of the office space to get a boba tea. Or bubble tea. That's also a whole lot of different discussion because I grew up in Asia. Everybody was calling boba bubble tea or pearl milk tea. We don't actually call them boba. It's up until I moved to the Bay Area, I realized people call it boba, and I had no idea boba is a different meaning than I thought, because I thought boba was just like the other way around, like a bubble. It's a fun way of talking about the name. And then I realized that when I was doing like research on writing the boba emoji proposal, it was actually the Cantonese slang for big boobs. And I was like, holy cow, I had no idea. But you find a lot of really interesting sort of historical discoveries or even pieces of histories that has been long forgotten. For example, even tea, like I had no idea that, in a way we kind of, right now we're living in a society that things are relatively easy to get. We can do like Postmates and you kind of have things delivered to your hand. And what's really, to me, I think it was very meaningful was to be able to reconnect with history through food. But the dumpling emoji got approved together with the chopstick fortune cookie and takeout box by the, I think was end of 2017. And in 2016, Jenny also was running this amazing conference called Emoji Con with a lot of other volunteers. I was also helping out with doing some emoji art show, but around the same time, I was very much interested in proposing another emoji with a friend that we both met. At the time, she was one of the sponsor of the Emoji Con, and her name is Irene Chu. She was also Asian American, an amazing lady, and we just kind of instant connected during the Emoji Con and become really good friends. And she was very supportive because she was bringing a lot of salad, like tea leaf salad, to the Emoji Con event. And I just became friends with her. It was only like 2 days. We kind of just become really good friends because we have a lot of things in common. She has a radio show kind of talking about the stories of Asian American. And at the time, we kind of, because she was working in this Burmese restaurant, we both were kind of curious why peacock was everywhere in the restaurant. And turns out the peacock was a very significant symbol in Burma. And we kind of just looking around when we were doing the Emoji Con, we were volunteer doing a lot of things and we just see peacock everywhere. And eventually we decided, okay, we got to submit the peacock emoji. So we ended up submitting the peacock emoji on the Emoji Con, that Jenny and a lot of other friends put together. And this story, I think Jenny didn't even know. I don't think I've ever told this story to Jenny, but so Irene and I, we still kept in touch, and the peacock emoji was finally became available. I think was in mid 2017 or 18. I couldn't remember.
18.
2018. So it was really sad because I get to know the news also because of food. I was traveling a lot at the time. I was being a speaker and I was doing a lot of traveling. So I didn't get the chance to, I was always wanting to catch up with Irene because we text each other. And for a while, I didn't get her text because I was traveling overseas. And I came back, I think it was end of 2017. I came back from Asia, was coming to the International Tea Festival. So I think it was in November, December, San Francisco have the celebration in the Ferry Building of the Tea Festival. And I went to the Ferry Building. And I know the Peacock has nothing to do with food, but there's a food component here, link us together, because it started with a tea leaf salad. And I was going to the tea festival because I'm a huge fan of coffee, but I'm also a huge fan of tea. And I was in the Ferry Building. I was walking through the alley and I saw this Burmese restaurant, like they have the Burmese restaurant, like their logos and everything. And I'm like, oh, Irene is there because the tea leaf salad. It makes sense because the tea leaf is also part of the tea family. And I went there, I tried to find her and she was not around. And I was asking a man that I kind of bumped into, I said, excuse me, I'm looking for Irene Chu. And turns out that was Irene's husband. And Irene passed away because of stroke just several months ago. And I was in tears. I've never had an experience like this, you know, in terms of like, I've only met Irene probably less than 10 times in my life. And we proposed this emoji together. Just
you're forever connected. Yeah. She was young. She was like in her, I mean, I think she's only like 2 years older than me. She was in her early 40s and she left the sun and was like so tragic. But like you guys are all connected. I mean, I feel like she's memorialized with the Peacock emoji.
I mean, it was, I think the emoji, like, and like, I think there's a lot of human connection. And I usually talk about this, I will just, you know, I have to take a moment because I feel like this is also not my work. Obviously it's not my job, but it's my work. And I feel like those are the things that really matters to me. Like those stories actually really matters to me. It's still part of my life experience. And I think that there's so much depth. You know, every time I look at the Peacock emoji, in a way, it's a memory and also association with that one particular person. But, you know, and like, it's really hard to kind of transition to another, but I kind of wanted to mention a little bit about just the weight of the food emoji I've been sort of working on and discover is, you know, the Boba emoji in a sort of a similar light. It was interesting that it was being rejected, and I kind of had to move on and sort of I didn't thought about it.
Many years, yeah.
It was sorry, yeah, go on.
Oh, I was gonna give some good gossip backstory about why Boa emoji wasn't accepted the first time. So just for some context for, and I give Ying a lot of credit for her passion around it, but so one of the things that the Unicode Consortium kind of cares about is whether or not something has a lot of longevity, because they had, you know, the floppy disk, which like did not necessarily, it did not age well. So this is actually one of the reasons why certain things like, you know, we get a lot of proposals for the drone emoji, and we get, and like for like a VR type emojis, those things like kind of trend out. And so the thing about Boba is that it probably only dates back to like the mid 1990s. So or maybe early 1990s, mostly from Taiwan. And, you know, unlike something like the Arepa, which is probably hundreds, if not over almost 1,000 years of history, or the Dumpling, which had like, I think when we looked it up, it had like 2,500 years of history. And obviously the garlic and onion emoji have like huge kind of timelines. Boba is actually a fairly new kind of image. And what was interesting was, you know, because we were kind of making this kind of pitch for it, was I remember making this argument that there are only like a certain number of beverages that have like dedicated like entire retail outlets for it. So like beer, like a pub, right? Or you have like coffee and you have like, like Starbucks. And then boba as a drink is one of the very few drinks that has like whole kind of retail, like kind of vertical, dedicated to it. So we kind of made the argument that it's like very global. And even though it's sort of young, like it's very rare actually, even wine really doesn't kind of have that same kind of longevity. And then but it was rejected, which I understood. And we were not going to like go, we were not going to kind of go to the mat for it. But what happened actually a couple of years later was there was a professor from University of Illinois who had done a study where she tried to get people to describe places or things using only 5 emojis. So like Black Panther, right? So it would be like, the black cat or something. And then one of the things that people often described in emoji was boba. And so she could see the repeated kind of use of tea, milk, and the black circle as a way, or sometimes it's like milk, then tea, then the black circle. And so we could, because she had some research behind it, we kind of took another swing back at it, making the argument that this was, sort of iconic. And like, there's this thing also in Unicode where not all emoji are actually singular emojis. Some of them are like compound emojis. So like rainbow flag is actually a white flag and a rainbow. And so we made the argument to Unicode that like, oh, you don't actually have to make the whole boba emoji. You could just do milk and tea and, circle and kind of like squish them together. Yeah. And so we got it passed. So I have to tell you, like, some of the old white men on the committee were like it looks like a parfait. Like, why? How can you tell that's like boba? And we were just kind of, and luckily there are a lot of like Asian women running around, tech companies. And so the Facebook person who's in charge of emoji really wanted it. And so she kind of like fought for it. But it's interesting to see how the demographics impact everything. And so, I actually will kind of bounce it back to like Sebastian and Clint. If there are other emoji that you think are underrepresented on the keyboard, either food emoji or like cultural emoji, and then I will answer actually some of the questions that are in the chat about the chances of some emojis.
This year I tried to get the hammock emoji approved.
Oh, that was so hard.
Yeah. Both because it's actually very important in Venezuela. It's very common, and I love hammocks and I love napping. Napping is my superpower, so I wanted the hammock emoji personally, but that didn't make it. I'll keep. That was
really hard. Fighting. Yeah. Do you want to explain actually did we ever tell you all of the problems with it in terms of why it was so hard? And I think you got a lot of requests.
It was a very hard visually to represent a hammock in a very small space. That was the main problem. And I see a lot of requests for different emojis in the chat. And that's one of the biggest problems that most emoji proposals face, is that adding an emoji like for the shallot, it would have been very hard to have a little shallot that's clearly distinguishable from an onion and from garlic and from other different vegetables. And so anything that's very hard to recognize at a small scale has a very small chance of being approved. So it's a hard fight in many cases. I would love to see many other emojis. I mean, one of the biggest requests I hear from people is for more specific emojis. Is I don't want the arepa, I want the cheese arepa, and I want the chicken arepa, and I want That's never going to happen. That's really hard. I would love to have. I mean, and it's part of it is a technological problem. It's the resolution of the screen, but also how do you put those so many different images in a keyboard? And I'd hope that might get resolved in the future. Somebody might come up with a great idea as to how to allow for a keyboard emoji that allows 1 million emojis instead of a couple of thousand. But that's one of the biggest fights for most emojis, is that it has to be representable and it has to be popular enough that it deserves. Because having the arepa in that location in the keyboard means that there's something else that's not there. It's not that it replaced something. It didn't remove something from that space, but something else could have taken the place of the arepa when it was proposed, and you kind of have to argue that it deserves that that spot, that enough people are going to use it to make it worth that recognition. And so if people want to use the arepa to talk about the gorditas in Mexico or flatbread in the Middle East, or if people want to use the boba emoji to talk about their frappuccino, more power to them. It's like, that's the thing with emojis, is they're not words, they're images. You put the meaning you want to put on them. And it's like, if somebody wants to use the peach emoji to talk about something that's not Georgia, then more power to them.
That's true. And just to give some context for the hammock emoji, because we went back and forth with Sebastian and folks like probably 2 or 3 times. Part of the issue was, do you put a human in it? Do you not put a human in it? If you put a human in it, it makes things very bad in emoji land, because you have to give everyone a skin tone and you have to give them 3 genders. So so we now have male, female, and non-binary. So as soon as you put a human into something, it explodes into 18 versions, and Unicode doesn't like that. So I will give credit to Sebastian and his and the designer, who came back, were like, you just had like a foot showing. And then maybe you maybe even put a shoe on it or something, so you didn't have any skin tones. But Unicode is very scared of anything with humans, which is why diving emoji, which is actually a great concept, but we were all like, oh my God, 18 emojis. Like, can we do it in an abstract way with like blue humans? Like, you'll see there's now a hug emoji, which has like blue people hugging each other. And that's a way trying to move back away from like, deep representation. Clint, do you have any other emoji that you feel particularly passionate about, or are you kind of like one and done with your alien set?
Well, I will say that 3 weeks ago, a bunch of people were pestering me about pomegranate. So
yes.
I feel compelled to repeat that.
Yeah, I feel I would I support you in your pomegranate. I think that has been one where we've seen it come in a couple of times. It's a little bit tricky when it's at small sizes, because also the whole thing is like, should it be cut? Should it not be cut? And we've I think there is support. There is going to be a little bit of a few with the image. So I don't know if you have a designer, or we should go back to the designer, or there's Yiying. But one of actually the hardest ones along the pomegranate is the date emoji, which we tried proposing, because it's very culturally important in Muslim culture. It's in the Quran. If you go anywhere, like for tea in like the Middle East, you'll get your tea and like all the dates. And I remember, so that was rejected in part because like people considered it not like, you couldn't tell what it looked like at small sizes. Like it looked like a little brown mouse dropping, for example. And and also the other problem with date was that the word date is actually really bad for statistics, because you have both like the meaning of the fruit, and then also like the date as in like a romantic thing, and then also date as in like day, month, week, right? And so the statistics for the word date are just like completely like, you can't kind of tease them apart, which actually works against it in this case. So there are some fruits like fig, date, and pomegranate that are popular in the Mediterranean area that I think we're going to try to go, and bat for from Emoji Nation. But if you have people with some moral authority on the pomegranate, Clint, I would recommend like trying again.
I would support that. I love pomegranate personally.
And Sari's proposing the artichoke. That'll be
I love artichoke as well. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
One thing that I would really recommend, little inside, is that you probably heard all of our stories. There's every emoji, or most recent emojis, especially the less obvious ones, have a proposal behind them. And those proposals are often amazing documents that tell little pieces of trivia that you never knew about that emoji and its cultural significance. And most of them are available. If you go to Emojipedia and search for a specific character, they often have a link at the bottom of the page that shows you the original proposal. Like if you're bored one day and have nothing better to do, reading a couple of those is a fun thing to do.
It's very fun.
Yeah, I mean, having been helping with Emoji Nation, reviewing other people's proposals, I've seen a lot of fun stories about every single thing that's being proposed, and they're a good read.
Oh yeah, beaver emoji. It was a lesbian, so it's a professor actually at Harvard whose wife she's lesbian and her wife is from Canada. And so for her, she really wanted the beaver emoji for many different reasons. And she always promised me if she got it through that it would be the first line in her bio, in her, like Twitter bio. So it actually does say Joan Donovan, comma, creator of the beaver emoji, comma, is like head of research at the Harvard University Shorty Center for blah, 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 blah. And it's, she too also feels like it's one of the best things that she's ever done. So there's some questions in the chat. I can answer some of those. And sorry if you want to pick, I'll start answering some of them, but if sorry, also you want to kind of discern what's interesting. So one person asked who is on the Unicode committee. So to tell you something, so there's a Unicode technical committee, and within that there is a Unicode emoji subcommittee. And as part of my travel down the rabbit hole, I became a vice chair. There are many vice chairs of the Unicode technical emoji subcommittee. The voting members of Unicode tend to be U.S. multinational tech companies who pay originally $18,000 a year to have full voting rights. Maybe now I think it's gone up to 21,000. So these are Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, IBM, Adobe, and then there are like a couple of others. But in terms of like who really counts in terms of like having an opinion, it's Apple, it's Google, it is Microsoft third, and then Facebook sort of, if that makes sense, because Facebook does things with WhatsApp. So, Emoji Nation sort of like through a Kickstarter kind of paid for like a non-voting membership a couple of years ago. This was in like 2016?
Yep.
Yeah, 2015, 2016. And so we kind of have a little voice, but in terms of what really matters, it depends like what the vendors, like if Apple wants something, it's probably going to happen, and if as long as
there's also
the
a couple
agree.
of not in the emoji side, but in general in Unicode, there's a couple of governments from Oman, from Bangladesh, places like that. Every now and then they join to try to push for their local characters, not emoji in specific. But I have to say that having Jennifer in the Unicode committee, in the emoji committee, is great, not just to have a voice or whether we have a vote or not, but we have ears in the discussion. We get to see we get direct feedback on most of our proposals in a way that would not happen if it's just a rejection letter that says, yes, your emoji was interesting, but we don't want to do it. We get to hear what's happening in the discussion.
Yeah, no, and sometimes we can tip it a little bit, and you have to kind of decide when you're going to throw down and go to the mat. Like some things I've not gone. I think I did not go to the mat for Raspberry. I did go to the mat for Arepa, and this actually answers some of the other questions in the chat, which was, so someone wanted to know what about naan, someone wanted to know what about scallion pancake. And so one of the ways that we got Arepa through was by saying it could kind of represent like generic flatbreads, which, does sort of represent naan, does sort of represent like Bing type things, pancakey type things in China, sort of, if you squint, can represent injera from Ethiopia. We know that it doesn't really, but one of the arguments that I made in sort of a larger like food thing was like all the different shapes of bread, carby kind of thing. So, there's like the long baguette, and then, there was also the bagel, even though it's like a bagel also represents a class of kind of bread type things. Croissant, I felt like, I don't think croissant would make it these days, but I think it like kind of got grandfathered in. But I made a deep argument that like flatbreads were in the taxonomy of like bread like things, you couldn't ignore flatbread. It was part of the way that we got it through. But someone asked about pancake. I actually was at the meeting in late 2015 when they discussed passing pancake or not passing pancake. And one of the active debates was actually, is it pancake or pancake? you know, because like if you have a stack of pancakes, it becomes very Western. If you have one, you could also represent like being, or like crepes or whatever at the end of the day, or what, you know, because it is a Western dominated committee, they went with pancake pearl. And as a result, you know, I think scallion pancakes best. If you're going to do scallion pancake, I would probably do like onion pancake. Like I think we can one day can get scallion through again, but it's not going to be anytime soon.
Jenny, can I interject with a question about the documentary? Because we actually like haven't really talked about film so much, which is fine because this is sort of like its own independent conversation. But I mean, how has your life changed, like representing, you know, your work and your company since this documentary has come out? And I guess that question is also maybe there was a question like, what for all of the panelists, since getting your emoji out there in the world, like has it opened doors for you professionally? And also just tying in like, since the documentary is out there, and so it's like this whole idea and awareness that there's actually like people and activism and advocacy like behind the emojis. Has this changed any of your lives or careers?
You guys want to speak to it? Yiying, I feel like, I mean, my tiny thing is one of the cooler things is we worked on a lot of emoji, and two of them were just, the proposals were just collected by the Smithsonian Cooper Hewitt Museum. And so I have like, you know, with a bunch of the other Emojination people have, you know, like Jennifer Lee, like USA, born, you know, the year, and then, you know, I'm still alive, so it hasn't like, I don't get the end date. And so I think, you know, Victoria and Albert Museum collected the mosquito emoji, which wasn't, you know, from one of our designers. So it's been kind of cool. And I think, you know, Yiying, you've probably seen a lot of art exhibits with your work.
Sure. I mean, I think it's definitely in a way directly contribute to my life. And also, yes, absolutely. It's something that I didn't anticipate. And I think I want to also answer one of the questions early on. They're asking if it's a paid or is it volunteer. So far, everything I do is really voluntary. And like Jenny as well, I think everybody here as well, it's something we did initially, it was kind of just driven by passion. But I quickly realized that I think everything is sort of intertwined with the professional thing that I'm already doing. Because before I was doing the emoji, I was speaking about cross-cultural design. And it was interesting how people really want to learn more about how to actually design an emoji. And we didn't have enough time to talk about the entire design process of designing the food emoji. I mean, that itself can take like hours to just kind of dig into the nitty gritty of making the actual shape. And I've been hosting classes for students from around the world, like doing emoji design exercise together during the pandemic. And to me, I think it really helped me to not only helping me to connect with more people, but also helping me to connect with my root. I had to do research about tea because I was doing the boba tea, and I was digging into the stories of the tea plantation. And also it made me discover a lot of historical events that associate with tea. Same thing with dumpling. It's amazing that even the actual shape of dumpling, I had to find out the shape of that specific dumpling that we submitted. It's kind of like a crescent moon, kind of like equivalent. It looks like gyoza or pot stickers from Asia or mandu from Korea, but it also can be representative for pelmeni from Russia or pierogi from Poland. So it's pretty amazing that I learned all these names. So it's also better for me to communicate with my friend. Like I talked to some friend from like Jewish culture, I said kreplech, and we just blew people's mind. They're like, oh, I didn't know that you know kreplech. That's amazing. And this sort of connection with people, like the fact that you made the food that represented their culture and you can say the name, people instantly, like I think one of my favorite story, I was going to, I think it was like a political event, like they had like all the politicians like in the table. It was like a sort of building bridges of cultures. And at the time there was this very stern person sitting next to me, and he's like my dad's age, and we were like people try to find common ground and try to kind of start a conversation. But my favorite thing is, as soon as someone was introducing me that as the designer of the Boba emoji, he just totally lit up. He's like, my daughter loves Boba, and we kind of started to have a conversation. And I think, if anything, in my professional career or personal career, it really helped me to instantly establish a connection with another person because of this volunteer work I do. I think that just means everything. But also, I think part of me also realizing that, you know, of all the panelists, I think it's really wonderful. Like, we tell the story from different aspects. And one of the goal that I also have was being able to allow more people to express themselves visually. I mean, I know that you have to pair with someone to find a designer to make the actual emoji submission if you don't draw. And I feel like that's almost just like someone speaks the visual language, right? Like, I think that we all have the capacity of being able to draw. And now we have all these apps that's available. You could actually start to create visually. And that's also something I've been starting to do. I've been hosting like design drawing classes with Apple employees or like different employees from different tech companies. And I think that's also opened up a lot of just really amazing, I think it's a life path for not only myself, but also letting other people discover they also have a very creative side themselves and reconnect with their ancestors from the food that we create. I mean, I can go on forever, but I want to make sure like everybody get the chance to talk about their things.
Clint, Sebastian, did it touch your professional lives in any meaningful way?
I have yet to get offered a job because of the Arepa emoji, but I would not. I don't know how, but I'm sure it will have an impact soon enough. I mean, I think that the fact that the emoji was only visible to most people only a couple of months ago, that has limited its usefulness to me professionally. But I think I'm sure that in the years to come, some connection will be made just because of it. I already have. I mean, I've met a lot of people because of it. I met Jennifer. I met Yiying. I met the entire Emoji staff. I met Lumen. I made so many connections just because of a passion for emoji in general. That's been more than worth it. Apart from the fact that we got the Arepa in the emoji set, that by itself is the main accomplishment.
Yeah.
I was told once that I should kind of brag about it at a job interview because that was the type of thing that got people hired there. But that's about it.
I do think like if you can like drop that into like into
Actually,
a job
it's perfect
interview,
for casual conversation.
Yeah, and it'll make you memorable also, you know, at any kind of like dinner, you know, table, you know, whatever, you know, on dating apps also, it's always sort of like an interesting, like two truths and a lie type of situation.
Yeah,
But,
or you do like Yiying and put all the emojis next to your name until somebody asks, why do you put all those emojis in your name?
It'll definitely be the best icebreaker ever in the future when we can have parties in person again.
Oh yeah,
I've since the emoji came out, I've been waiting to be in one of those situations when somebody says, okay, everybody introduce yourselves and say a fun fact about you. It's like, oh,
you'd win every time.
Yeah.
Great. Well, this is perfect. We're right at time, and I think we got all of these questions, so that's fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
I will definitely follow up tomorrow with everyone's like social media handles and all of their information. And I'm sure you saw that, you know, Jenny put so much information in the chat, so I'll go back through that and make sure you have it. So if you have ideas and a burning passion for your food emojis,
you can join our Emoji Nation Slack. If you just go to emojination.org, you know, click on it. And also if anyone wants to host screenings in their like business or for schools, we have like different grants or, you know, different pots of money, especially for any under-resourced schools for kids. But yeah, we kept the actual rights because COVID. So as a result, we can do very flexible things like working with MOFAD, which is great. We loved everyone who signed up.
Great. And we hope everyone enjoyed the film. Let us know what you thought. If you haven't watched it yet, you're in for such a treat. So thank you everyone so much for joining us. Jenny, everyone, thank you so much for being part of this very, very just delightful conversation. I learned so much. Hope to see everyone soon back here again. You know where to find us on Zoom.
Yes.
Yes, stay safe, everyone. See you soon.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.